Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there, and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. Oh, no.
Amateur Traveler, episode 210. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about ancient temples, old capitals, and monkeys as we go back to Thailand.
Sit in one more cafe. I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Generally, at this part of the show, I do some news. I didn't find any news that caught my eye today, and one thing I wanted to talk to you about is, since I'm now doing every week a 1-hour travel news show with Gary Arndt, Jen Leo, and other guests called This Week in Travel, I'm wondering if I still need to do a travel section on the Amateur Traveler. Could you leave a comment at theamateurtraveler.com on this episode and let me know if you think it's necessary? And now on to the interview. I'd like to welcome back to the show Matt Kepkes from Nomadic Matt. Matt was on before talking to us about Western Australia and has come back to talk to us about Thailand. Matt, welcome back to the show.
It's good to be back. I'm a big fan of the show, and I'm glad to be on it again.
And we say from Thailand, you're actually, right now as we're talking, you're in Bangkok.
Yes, I'm currently in Bangkok till next week. Then I fly off to New Zealand.
And you are pitching me a different destination in Thailand that's a little different from the 1 week in Thailand tourist track that a lot of people have done. Tell us a little bit more about what we're going to talk about.
Well, when I was here backpacking many years ago, my friends and I decided to take the day train from Bangkok to Chang Mai. Most people just take the night train. And on the way, we stopped at the 3 old capitals from the Thai empires, Sukhothai, Lopburi, and Ayutthaya. We thought that would be an interesting way to see the countryside, as well as do something different. Not just head up to Chiang Mai and do an elephant trek, or head to Phuket and go scuba diving.
Okay.
Get off the beaten path.
So, first of all, how far is that from Bangkok? You say this is a day train that normally only takes a day to get up to Chiang Mai?
Yeah, most people take the night train so they
Hmm.
don't waste a day. I, having done the day train, think the night train is an awful idea because you miss out on the beautiful countryside. You get to go through the whole countryside up north and all these jungles and small towns that at night you just can't see.
Sure.
And moreover, during the day, at every stop, people are coming on, selling different food and prepared meals that are a great little snack, but gives you a chance to sample some really, really local, regional Thai food that's only unique to sort of the northern part, which you might not get down south.
Like what sort of things?
You usually get rice and these little tiny pieces of chicken that they sort of grill up. Somtam, which is papaya salad. I mean, you can get that everywhere, but it's more of a traditionally northern food.
And is it different than what you would get in Chiang Mai, or is it just kind of a foretaste of that?
Yeah, it's a preview. Yeah, and you get all these little like Thai dessert snacks and fried rice or curry chicken along the way, all for 10, 20 baht, which is like steel.
What is the baht to the dollar roughly right now?
The current exchange rate is 33 baht to the dollar.
Okay, all right. So we're talking 66 cents or so. Okay. So
Yeah.
the first time you did that, you're on the train, you're going through the countryside. What surprised you?
Just how rustic it was.
Okay.
Thailand is a country that bridges the developed and the undeveloped world, so to
Okay.
speak. Bangkok, Chang Mai, the islands, they're very modern, they're very developed. People speak English very well. There's a lot of international food. But once you get out of these major international centers, it is a step back in time, and you just see lots of small towns, chickens along the road, metal roof houses, people riding really, really old cars, petrol stations that are not stations, they're just somebody on the side of the street selling gasoline from an empty whiskey bottle.
You mentioned the three different cities. What itinerary would you recommend? So we're flying into Bangkok, or we're doing part of our trip there, and then we're taking up the day train you already suggested.
Yeah.
And where do we go first?
So first you go to Ayutthaya. It's about an hour and a half from Bangkok by train. When I took it, it was 10 baht to get there, which you're talking 30 cents. Now keep in mind, while I give you these prices, that take the night train from Bangkok to Chiang Mai, so it's 600 baht for a sleeper. So you get up to Ayutthaya. It's one of the oldest capitals. Most of the temples are pretty run down. There's not a lot to do in the town. It's very small and very quiet. But the temples there are very nice. Here you'll have the famous Buddha head that's sort of stuck in a banyan tree. The tree has grown over the face. It's quite a common
Is
picture.
that the one that was the cover of the Lonely Planet or one of those recently?
That's exactly one.
Okay.
And there's about 10 temples there, and they're pretty big, and you can spend a day walking around and seeing them.
It's a smaller scope than you'd find, for instance, up in the big complex up in Chiang Mai. But it's probably also a lot less crowded.
You get a lot of day trips come from Bangkok,
Okay.
and then they leave. So between 10 and 2 is very crowded, but in the morning and night, there's no one else there. I thought the temples were nice, pretty big, but very run down, but good to explore. And at night, there's pretty much all the locals left. It's a great way to see some more rural Thailand out of the city, see the night markets. That was very nice because I had just come from the island. I had just come from Bangkok. Now I am in quiet Thailand. In quotation marks, real Thailand.
You were mentioning it being one of the former capitals. So roughly what time period are we talking about that this was the capital?
This was the capital around the 1600s.
Okay.
Thailand had 3 old capitals, and Ayutthaya, Lopburi, and Sukhothai, but depending on when they were conquered by the Khmer, they kicked them out, and then conquered by the Burmese, and they kicked them out. The capitals sort of always changed.
Okay, so the Khmer are coming in from what is now Cambodia, and the Burmese from the other direction, from the western direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Ayutthaya, Thai Kingdom was from about 1400 to 1700.
Okay.
Then they were invaded by the Burmese, and then they kicked the Burmese out, and then the capital became Bangkok.
Okay. And then Thailand being the only nation in that region that wasn't ever a colony of somebody else. And I think they're fairly proud of that independence, as I recall.
They are very, very, very proud of it, that. But don't ever tell them that was because they gave away Cambodia to the French.
Okay.
They ignore that part of the story. But all countries have selective memory.
Oh, sure. And what would you do next?
Continuing up toward Chiang Mai, you move to Lopburi. This is more of a Khmer-influenced capital.
Okay.
The capital during the Khmer rule, and there's not a lot here. There's maybe about 6 temples, pretty well run down. What Lopburi is famous for now is the wild troop of monkeys that roams the city.
That roams the city, okay.
It roams the city. There's a big temple to monkeys here, and they have a very big festival once a year, don't know the date, to these monkeys. And they won't do anything for population control because they view these monkeys as sacred.
Okay.
So,
all of these temples, when you say temples, are all Buddhist temples or former Buddhist temples in this case.
yeah.
Okay.
The monkeys roam the city, sort of a tourist trap in some ways. A lot of people come to see just the monkeys.
Okay.
But you gotta watch out for the monkeys because they're very well adjusted to humans. And they would have no problem running up to a human and stealing their food from their mouth. Like they did with me. Twice. Twice they attacked me for food.
And when you say attacked you, stole your food and run away, or left you lying in the gutter here?
Stole my food and ran away.
Okay.
With a shocked disbelief look on my face.
Just at the table of the restaurant, or?
I was walking down the street eating the meat on a stick, and they just came at me. I also saw them jump on some woman's hair and start trying to de-lice her. And she's running around, so we had to shoo the monkey away. So they're very well adjusted. You just need to avoid them. Don't feed the monkeys, don't play with the monkeys.
I can almost hear the sound of people crossing this off of their list of places to go as you describe it there. So why shouldn't they? If they're afraid of monkeys, why should they still go here?
Because Lopburi has the best selection of Khmer buildings in Thailand.
Okay.
When the Khmers came, they sort of made this their capital region. And so most of the well-preserved Khmer temples not near the Cambodian border are in Lopburi. And so you'll see heavily influenced Khmer architecture throughout the city. And that's sort of unique to Thailand because there's not much of that around.
When you say heavily influenced by the Khmer, how would I recognize a building that has a Khmer influence?
They look like Angkor Wat, like
Okay.
small little Angkor Wat. Like the big stupas that sort of go up and in and to a little
Up to a
round
point.
point on top.
Okay.
Yeah.
Versus a Thailand temple that would look how?
Like a bell.
Okay.
The stupas are more smooth and they go up like a bell.
In Thailand.
Yeah, they come up to like a little point.
Okay.
That's how the best way to explain it.
I'm hoping by this point in the enhanced version there'll be a picture of the two different versions that'll help people with the description here, okay?
Yes. We can provide pictures. And another great thing about Lopburi is that at night there is a huge night market near the train station. You can get really, really local Thai food at rock bottom prices compared to what you would have paid for Thai food in, say, a city like Bangkok.
Okay. When you say less expensive than Bangkok, I still don't picture Bangkok being expensive by American standards, but it's expensive by Thai standards, or am I wrong about that?
Well, the local food is cheap, so
Okay.
if I went to the street in a local area and I got some pad Thai, it might cost me 30 baht. But
So
in
about $1,
Lopburi,
okay.
it could, yeah, a little less than $1. In Lopburi, I could probably get it for 20 baht.
Okay.
So while the difference isn't big when you convert it back into dollars, when you think of local prices, you just knock off a third.
Okay. And I don't know if you're a big shopper. Are there other things you're shopping for besides food in the night markets, or are you mainly using this as your restaurant?
Mainly use it as the restaurant. The best place to go shopping for material goods is Bangkok or Chiang Mai.
Okay.
Here you'll find lots of good stuff cheap. These night markets in the small town, they sell a few little goods, but I mean, it's nothing you go, oh, I need to have that in my house.
Okay,
Most
they're
of the
selling
food
more
that-
local crafts rather than manufactured goods. Is that the difference?
Yeah, or like really cheap socks and underwear and poorly designed clothes.
Poorly, you say poorly designed clothes. I have the strangest pictures in my head.
Like shirts and dresses, you look at it and wonder, at what time in life was that ever a good fashion?
Okay.
So these aren't the best place to get goods. They're the best place to eat.
Okay.
Because in the big cities, especially when you're a tourist, you tend to eat in a lot more restaurants, and there's more restaurants around.
Sure.
These small little cities are heavily on the traditional night market and outdoor stalls. So you get a lot more variety, I feel, when you go to these little tiny towns.
Okay.
And they're all centrally located. They always have that one main central night market where just everything is there.
Okay. Now, before you went, you probably read up. You don't do a lot of carrying of guidebooks usually, as I recall, but doing more research on the internet. Do I have you pegged correctly? Okay. Any suggestions you ran into that didn't pan out for you, and other surprises that were not suggested?
Well, at the time, we were just kind of winging it in terms of where we were going. Things that didn't pan out was actually in the next stop, we had some issues.
Okay.
When we went to Sukhothai. But Ayutthaya, we were told that it was going to be like this one area was a great place to eat and had a lot of bars. But it actually had one bar and no place to eat. When you go to Ayutthaya, you need to expect a real quiet time.
Okay.
And we found the places in Lopburi, a lot of the hotels, to be more expensive than they thought they would be.
And again, expensive by Thai standards.
Expensive by Thai standards.
And what is expensive by Thai standards?
Having come out of the islands, we were determined to be as local and cheap as we could.
Okay.
So in Ayutthaya, we got 100 baht a night.
So a little over $3.
Yes, which is very, very good for a guest house in Thailand.
Okay.
And Lopburi, we found we were spending 200, double that.
Okay.
And there weren't as many guest house options, and so what was there filled up pretty quickly.
So you were still staying in guest houses, there just weren't as many of them there.
Yeah.
And when you say guest house, a guest house is...
A guest house is sort of a cross between a hostel with common areas and breakfast and shared bathrooms, but with a hotel in which that you have private rooms, aircon, a decent sized bed.
Okay, so it's actually a step up from a hostel, just $3.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're the most common way to sleep around Asia.
And I'm curious then, is there something that is an even cheaper option than that?
Yeah, you can find some guest houses do dorms.
Okay.
It's rare, but especially in Bangkok, you see a few of them. In Chang Mai, you see a few of them, in which a dormer might cost 80 baht a night, $2. But for the extra $1, you can get your own room and bath. How cheap do you really need to be?
Right, no, that's that's cheap enough, thanks. Okay, just curious.
Some backpackers and travelers will sleep in a chicken coop if it's cheap enough, but there's something to be said for a little bit.
I've smelled chicken coops, I have limits, yeah.
Yeah.
And I interrupted your itinerary there. You had one more city we were going to.
Yes, so from Lopburi, the next stop is Sukhothai. That is a national park now, and where you can find the best preserved temples around in Thailand. Now, to get there, you go from Lopburi, you take a train to a town called Pisanalup, and then from Pisanalup, you take the bus to the Sukhothai Park.
Okay. And I'm going to have fun trying to look that up for the show notes, but okay.
I'll email you.
Oh, thank you.
So it's a little bit more complicated to get to.
Okay.
And this is where we sort of fell in disarray in terms of our travel schedule. We didn't know that. We thought we could just take the train to Sukhothai and get off. We could walk to a guest house, but this was not the case. We had to find a separate bus to Sukhothai and then find a way to get from the bus station to this guest house, which was nowhere near the bus station. And then in the morning, we had to rent a cab to get to the national park because it was quite a ways to walk.
Okay. Now, when you do the national parks and you're doing it on a backpacker's budget, are you getting a guide ever, or how can you tell what you're seeing? If you're not an archaeology student, for instance, how do you know what you're looking at?
There are signs
Okay.
around that sort of give you a small blurb, but for this we actually used the Lonely Planet. The Lonely Planet Thailand had information about the temple.
Okay.
This temple was for this, and that temple was for that. That's where we got basic information. We didn't walk away with any real in-depth information about each individual temple.
Sure. No, that's always the trade-off there, the budget traveler, but okay.
Yeah.
What do you wish you had known before you went, other than a better map of where the guest house was, for instance? Just in general for that area, what kind of information would have enhanced your trip?
I wish I would have known that you couldn't get to Sukhothai from the train station. You actually had a whole nother town away. But I think more information about the capital. Because the temples here are so well preserved, and they're really big, and the complexes have a lot going for them in relation to the other three sites.
Uh-huh.
My favorite site is Ayutthaya in terms of just beauty. But in terms of preservation, Sukhothai wins. Size and preservation, Sukhothai is much better. So it would have been nice to have had more information about these temples, because there's more of them. And not only just in quantity, but in terms of parts of the temple, more of it is actually there. It's just not a little rock and being like, this used to be a temple. 3/5 of the temple is still there, and you're kind of wondering, what does this do and what does that do, and
Okay.
what was the significance?
Who's the most memorable person you met in this area?
It has to be the woman in Lopburi who sold us these iced tea / ice cream things. She ran this little stand for kids, and she would make like iced tea, but she would put gummy bears or chocolate in it. So it was like a frozen iced tea drink, but with all sorts of weird candies in it, as well as Thai candy, or like chili, or bananas, or durian, the stinky fruit.
The stinky fruit, yeah.
So we would come, and we didn't know how to order anything, because now we're in the middle of Thailand, and the English here isn't that great. But she just kept on laughing and giving us different things to try. She gave us dried fish. Now, up until that point, I had never had dried fish, because if you're unlucky enough to be near it, it smells worse than a chicken coop. It is a really, really stinky food. But we held our nose and took a little bit, and quite surprisingly, it was pretty tasty. Very salty, but tasty. I remember her quite well. And I also remember the guy that laughed at us after we inadvertently ate a chili. We were getting meat on a stick and fish in the loop, and I was eating, and I thought this green chili wasn't a green chili, and I just ate it all at once. And I couldn't breathe, trying to catch my breath. This guy is laughing at us because he just saw these Farang Westerners eat a chili and not handle it. So he had a good time.
You talked about one of the complexes being prettier than the others. As you look at your pictures that you took of that trip, what one picture that you took really just brings you back there?
Well, I hate to say this photo because it's such a big photo, but the one with the Buddha's head in the tree.
Okay.
It's still one of my favorites from this whole trip, as well as this black and white / color photo I edited of a Buddha statue's hand with the flowers inside.
Okay.
The offering.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to name a third one here, too.
Okay.
Just because it reminds me of not the place, but the people. I had done Sukhothai with my two friends who I came up from the islands with, and these two girls we had met along the way. We were always taking crazy pictures, and in the last photo we took, there is me and my friend Charlie arguing over the directions, and we're each pointing two different ways. My friend Owen looking like, oh my god, what's going on? I can't believe I'm traveling with these people. And this girl, Francois, looking at the Lonely Planet like, I'm going to get the real information here. Forget you two guys who are arguing, I'm going to look it up. And it's one of my favorite pictures from that time. Just because it reminds me so much of the goofy fun we had while we were there.
As we go to wind this down, before I go to that part of Thailand, what's one thing I should pack?
Bug spray.
Oh, okay.
Lots and lots of bug spray.
Okay. So bugs and monkeys. All right, got it.
Yes. Avoid the monkeys, pack your bug spray.
Finish this sentence. You really know you're in the old capitals in Thailand when what?
When there's no touts trying to sell you stuff.
Okay.
You really know you're in the capital of Thailand when there's space.
Okay.
The old capitals, they seem to have more walking space around them. If you picture them in your mind built up again, it seems like there would be a little bit more room to maneuver than what has happened now in Bangkok, where 50 people try to squeeze on one little section of the sidewalk.
Okay, so you've left the noise and the traffic and the touts and the crowds and found a piece of quiet.
Yes.
Okay. And then final question. If you had to summarize this region in 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
Rural.
Okay.
Cheap.
Right.
And beautiful.
Okay, excellent. Matt, thanks so much for coming back on the show and telling us a little bit about a little corner of Thailand.
All right, well, thank you for having me, and hopefully one day I will have a show and you can be on it too.
And where can people read about your travels?
People can read about my travels at nomadicmatt.com and follow my miscellaneous travel thoughts on Twitter at nomadicmatt.
Great. Matt, thanks for coming.
Okay, thanks Chris for having me.
I have one internet resource for you today, and it's only for half the listeners to the show, and that is because it's a women-only resource, and that is the Global Dinner Network, or the GDN. It's global-dinner-network.com, and the Global Dinner Network connects women worldwide for the experience of a dinner with a friend anytime, anywhere. So you use it to meet another woman while you're traveling so that you can network. And so it's particularly targeted at women business travelers, but it is not just for that. So if you're interested, GDN Global Dinner Network. With that, we'll get into news of the community. I still don't have a definitive announcement yet for a possible amateur traveler trip on the 15th of March in Southeast Asia. I should know within the week, and I might actually put out a special episode this week if I get that news, because I'm not sure whether there'll be episodes in the next 2 weeks. I will be traveling, and I just haven't figured out how that's all going to work out. Don't forget that those of you in the New York City area, I'm still planning on doing a meetup on December 22nd. If you're interested in that, join the Facebook group. There's a link to that in the show notes at amateurtraveler.com. And there's an event in the Facebook group, and just indicate on that event whether you're interested. And if you have a suggestion of where to do it, I'm also interested in looking at that. I'll be trying to get to and from the JFK airport, so probably something downtown or possibly even in Brooklyn. And speaking of a possible New York meetup, I did hear from John, who works across the river from Manhattan and might be able to join us. He says, I've recently discovered your podcast, and I just wanted to let you know how much I enjoy it. I commute every day on the Northeast Corridor line from Bucks County, PA to Newark, New Jersey. Wow, that's quite a pull. And listening to your podcast while on the train lets me dream about fantastic trips to interesting places, most of which I'll likely never get to experience in person. You've got a great interview style, and you really bring out interesting points and perspectives in your guests. Oh, thank you. Thanks again, and keep up the great work. John, thanks so much for writing, and I hope to see you in New York. With that, we'll draw this episode to a close. Thank you for all of you who voted for the Amateur Traveler and the Podcast Awards. The results will be announced on the 12th of December. If you have any questions, feel free to comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com or drop me an email at host@amateurtraveler.com or follow me on Twitter at Chris2X. And as always, thanks so much for listening.